Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your hosts Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. Today's topic, the hugely popular and highly influential sci-fi action film, Terminator 2: Judgment Day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And as always, please be advised, spoilers are ahead.
Welcome back to Reels on the Rocks. We are definitely Whiskey and Sweet Tea. And Wolfie is just fine, everybody.
Oh my gosh.
And if you could let us know where the location of John or Sarah Connor is, please tweet us. But seriously, welcome back, everybody. Obviously, it's Terminator 2. Maybe we have been replaced by Terminators, maybe not.
Maybe not, but if we have been, we look amazing.
Awesome. So this is another one of my picks. I picked this for a couple reasons. The theme of the month is blockbusters, and this is a movie that Sweet Tea has never seen. So I kind of wanted to end that. And I feel like this is one that most of you have probably seen, so it won't matter that we're spoiling the heck out of it. It's a fun movie to talk about. It's super influential. It's kind of a huge tentpole movie for the 90s. And fun, we'll start off with this. One thing I like to do that's kind of fun is in the year that you were born, list off the highest grossing film of the year you were born, the best picture of the year you were born, and the Disney movie that came out the year you were born. So for me, it's Terminator 2 was the highest grossing. Best picture was Silence of the Lambs.
Yes!
And the Disney film that came out was Beauty and the Beast. How about you, Sweet Tea?
Oh my god. I wasn't ready for this. Let me just double check 1995.
Yeah, I'll let you look it up.
So for me,
it's just
the year I was born. Oh god, Forrest Gump was best picture.
While you're looking it up, my sister has a pretty good year too. So for her, highest grossing is Batman, Tim Burton's Batman. For best picture, it was Rain Man, and for her Disney film, it was The Little Mermaid. So yeah, I don't know. It's a fun thing, and you can add movies to it. I just feel like these three are always kind of a fun indicator of what was going on in the year you were born.
So the year that I was born, the highest grossing film was Die Hard with a Vengeance. And I'm looking ahead for what won Best Picture 1996 because that would have been the year, I guess.
I think that was Fargo. I might be wrong, but I think that was Fargo.
1996. Because I'm looking at based on what movies that were nominated that were playing the year I was born. So it looks like Best Picture. It looks like it was Braveheart.
Oh yeah, you're right. No, so yeah, Fargo came out in '96, but it won the year after. I think so.
Because if we went,
so you got Braveheart and Die Hard with a Vengeance
and Disney movies.
That was highest.
The highest grossing was number one. That's wild to me too. And
yeah, that's a good. I mean, I like that one, but I'm surprised that was the highest grossing of that year. And then for Disney film in '96, I think yours was.
Well,
oh, I know this because I dated someone your age. It's Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh, I love the Hunchback of Notre Dame. So
yeah, so you got a good year.
So okay, well, okay.
But anyway, so back to the film, back to the highest grossing film of my birthday year. This was a huge movie, obviously. So its budget was $102 million, which is crazy for the time. That's actually a really high budget. It grossed $520 million and $205 million in the U.S.
So it was printing money.
Worldwide gross of, yeah, pretty much. But this, and we'll get into this as it goes, but this movie was ridiculously influential. Oscar-wise, it was nominated for 6 Oscars and won 4 of them. It for Best Sound Effects, Best Visual Effects, and Best Makeup Effects. It lost Best Cinematography to JFK, and it lost Best Editing to JFK, which, I mean, cinematography, I don't know. I haven't seen JFK, so I
Oh my
should
god.
probably do that, but I'm kind of thinking that it probably should have won those two. It's a huge technical movie. Like, I talk about technical Oscars before, and this is what I'm talking about. A movie that might not be high art, so to speak, but is technically perfect. So, like, all of the moving parts to the movie are very well executed, whether it's the special effects or the sound or the cinematography. Like, anything that's much more on the less like creative. Well, I don't want to say creative because cinematography and editing can be really creative, but something that's a lot more has to do with the technology of film, that sort of thing. And that's where James Cameron has always been sort of ahead of the curve. Like, directors, I feel like, are the interesting thing about directors to me is they're all good at something. Like Tim Burton is very big on like visual, like he's a really talented artist. He can draw really well, so he has a lot of like very cool art design in his movies. You've got like Hal Ashby was an editor for years before he started making his movies. You've got all sorts of different things. And James Cameron, I mean, he started out as a matte painter for filmmakers like Roger Corman and stuff like that. He started on the technical end of things, doing like very like blue collar work for his films. When he makes them, always have a big technical achievement to them. Like, for instance, Avatar was shot using a 3D camera he helped create, and most of the film was actually done in motion capture, which had been used for stuff like Lord of the Rings, but like the way that he used it was so ahead of its time that now it's like his 3D camera and the motion capture he used was like standard. And that was the thing too, like I think his was the first time motion capture used lasers to scan the face. Like, before that, you had a bunch of little balls glued to your face that would be, captured. So that's what he's good at. Like, whether you think his movies are like high art or not, he's always been at the center of new technology and filmmaking. And this obviously was kind of the movie that popularized CGI. It was not the film that started CGI. Even like looking back at Disney as early as 1980, I believe, in The Black Cauldron, that actually had a computer-generated image in it. So it wasn't the first one to use this sort of technology, but it was the one that actually made it become the new sort of go-to technology for special effects in Hollywood. And just 2 years after this came out, Jurassic Park actually used CGI for its dinosaurs, when up until this movie came out, they were actually using stop motion animation for their dinosaurs.
Wow.
I don't know if you knew that, but this movie, they were in the middle of making Jurassic Park, and when this movie came out, they were like, we need to scrap all of this and they used Industrial Light and Magic, which is George Lucas's company, ILM for short. They were the ones that did the CGI for this, and after that happened, Steven Spielberg called them up and was like, hi, we need this kind of technology for our dinosaurs. And so that actually led to that. And actually, both of these movies for practical effect, like whenever there's like a Terminator robot that's not CGI, like anything that's like a physical makeup or animatronic or something, they actually use Stan Winston Studios, which was kind of the big practical effects studio of the time. I think they might have been the ones behind the effects of The Thing. I'd have to look that up, but they're big. Like they were like the big industry people. So they did the robot dinosaurs, the animatronic dinosaurs for Jurassic Park, and they did all of the like machines in this movie that weren't CGI. And then ILM did the CGI for both of the movies. So Jurassic Park and this movie have all of the same people working on the special effects.
Oh, when all the greats come together.
Right? Like, so this, to say that this was influential is like such an understatement. This is the film that popularized CGI, much to the chagrin of a lot of people who liked, Stan Winston and all the people doing practical effects. But I'll get into it later in the review, but there's some non-CGI effects that are actually pretty cool. And that's the thing with this movie, too. I feel like maybe some people who either haven't seen the movie in a long time or just kind of remember it differently think that everything was CGI in this movie, and that's really not the case. Kind of the same way with Jurassic Park. There was CGI dinosaurs, but there were also these really impressive animatronic dinosaurs, and it's the same thing with this. And James Cameron especially really knows how to mix special effects, because it's the same thing in Titanic. It's like there was CGI in that film, but there were also real sets.
Yeah.
Like when Rose and Jack are running from the water flooding, like that is a set and the water is flooding.
Right.
And also James Cameron was very keen on making sure the water was freezing cold, so that, you know, anytime they were like shivering, it's like they weren't acting. Like he made it ice cold so that they would be like feeling what characters should be feeling.
I feel like some actors unions would have some issues with that nowadays.
Maybe, but you don't argue with James Cameron. It's like you take the job, and that's the thing too. He's got a reputation for having a bit of a temper, from what I understand, but no one has ever said he was like abusive on set. He was always professional. Like he never like yelled at actors or anything like that. He's just very like one-minded when he's making a movie.
I have always heard that he's somebody that you wouldn't want to work with. You do, because he has a great mind, but you wouldn't, if you didn't have to, you wouldn't want to work with him. That's how I've always heard it phrased.
Would you, like, is it someone who's worked with him?
Yeah, it's people who've worked under him, like, not the celebrities, but, like,
okay.
But, you know, essentially, you know, I guess, for lack of a better term, the matte painters, the
I gotcha. I had a friend who worked as a PA for him during summers, and she said he had a temper, but she said she didn't hate working for him.
Okay.
He just kind of had like.
Maybe he's gotten better.
You did not want to piss him off. That was true. Like, you did not want to get on his bad side, but he was never, like, needlessly cruel to people.
Right.
At least that's what she said. And again, like, the actors who've worked with him and crew and stuff like that, I've never heard anyone say he's like, abusive or anything like that. But, I don't know. I've never worked with him. And tempers are high on sets, man. Like even the best filmmakers have their moments.
Right. Well, and you know, maybe because I think this broke a while ago, so it's possible he's just kind of just learned to properly channel whatever he's feeling, and now it's just he just gets upset, and that's it. We don't know what's going on. That's just what I've just heard. Around.
The other thing I've heard is that he's very hands-on. Like, if there is a problem, like, he's in there doing it instead of telling someone to do it.
Makes sense.
And I think that comes from the fact that he used to be a crew member.
Yeah.
So it's like, if there is a problem with the set, like, he knows how to fix it.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And it kind of goes with, like, I'm not joking when I say he invented the 3D camera that Avatar was shot with.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that movie was in pre-production for 9 years because he was working with tech companies to make a new type of camera. Like, that is James Cameron in a nutshell. Like, if the technology doesn't exist for his movie to be made, he will invent the new technology so that it's possible to be made.
One of these days, James Cameron will become sentient and destroy us all. I'm just kidding.
He's a movie Terminator.
Right.
He was sent back in time by Cyberdyne to make movies. So going into this, I know you've always been kind of hesitant to see this movie, and I just wanted to push you in the deep end of the pool. But what did you think of it?
So couple things. So I had never seen this movie in full. I found out later when I was watching this, I had seen scenes just off and on. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to phrase this. I did not hate this movie, and my issues with the movie are not the movie's fault. My issue with it is that unfortunately it became so successful and so, as you said, influential that literally every scene in this movie I had seen parodied or referenced or remade somehow. And so it was kind of like the entire movie I knew what was going to happen next, because it, like I said, it became so successful that I essentially had seen the movie in its entirety, but through other different pieces. So, you know what I mean? So there was no suspense for me. Does that make sense?
It's a trouble with a lot of really popular movies. Like, I'm a Star Wars fan, and it's hard to find someone who doesn't know the big twist in Empire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was actually fortunate enough to show this to someone who lived so deep under a rock that they had never seen anything about it. And I told them nothing about the movie other than, oh, it's Terminator 2, so there are 2 Terminators. And so when I was watching this film with someone, the bit where Arnold Schwarzenegger and the other Terminator are cornering John Connor, and Arnold says, "Get down," and then pulls out the shotgun and shoots the other Terminator, the person I was watching this with literally gasped and went, "What?" Because they thought the whole point was that there were going to be 2 Terminators going after John Connor, and so when it turned out one of them was protecting John Connor, they were literally... So, like, it's one of those things where if you're lucky enough to show this to someone who has no idea what it's about, it's very good at, like, getting you pumped, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm kicking myself for not having done this. This week I meant to look up the theatrical trailer because I think that was actually kept secret until the movie came out. So I think that was actually supposed to be like a surprise to everyone who went to see the movie. Because I think it was marketed as, oh, there are 2 Terminators now going after him.
Well, and
then I think when that happened...
And I think, because again, I watched, and I told you I was going to have to watch with my family because they're huge fans of this movie. And so, yeah, they did confirm that. They were like, that was the big thing when this movie is in that moment you realize, oh, there's a good one this time.
Okay, so I'm not crazy.
No, you're not.
Family is confirming that for
yes.
me. Okay, and that's genius. That is such a cool... Because imagine, especially if you were a fan of the first movie, and you see the bad guy in the first movie is now the good guy in the set. Like, right. I can only imagine. I actually hadn't been born yet when this movie came out, but I could imagine being like a 13-year-old boy going to see this and just being so excited, being like, oh my god, there's 2 Terminators fighting each other.
Yeah. That whole first scene, though, you know who I felt bad for? That poor guy who was just sipping his Pepsi. He was probably probably on his way to his stupid job at Hot Dog on a Stick. And
well, that was another thing. Now that you've seen it, I can say this, but like, because I know one of the things that kind of bothers you with these types of movies is all of the collateral damage with innocent people. But another thing, I don't know if they kind of make a point of it about halfway through the movie. So you did notice. As soon as the hero does not hurt anyone who is innocent. Though, like, he does attack those bikers at the beginning of the movie, but it's sort of like implied that they probably weren't exactly innocent people.
And no one actually dies. None of them died. But as soon as I saw him make that deal with the guy, I'm like, this is why Whiskey was like, I think you'll like this one.
Exactly. The bit I'm talking about halfway through where John Connor's like, don't kill anyone.
After he gets him to kill someone.
That's an order from me.
I was like, oh my god, kid.
Right? Even though I think that scene is so funny to me because at first he's like, haha, you're calling me a dipshit? Why don't you punch this guy? Like, it's so funny to me. He's being such a little jerk. Yeah. And then as soon as the Terminator's doing what he does, the kid's like, no, don't kill him. It's like, you're the one who did that. Like, you're the one. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
In that scene kind of gave me flashbacks to, what was the one that just came out? I think it was Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom or something. And we have the ending where that girl releases dinosaurs to on the population. And I'm just like, you stupid child, what did you just do?
Dude, that line she says is the funniest because she finds out she was a clone, and it's like, they're just like me. I watched that, and then I was talking with somebody else about that scene, and they're like, oh no, it's supposed to show that she... And I'm like, no, she's an idiot. She released dinosaurs onto the population. That's not okay. Yeah, and somebody else finally pointed out to this guy, no, we hate her for that. She sucks. I was going to say, whoever you were talking to is defending that. It must be like a fanboy of that movie because I was laughing my ass off when I saw that movie because of how exactly what you're saying. It's like she has just ruined multiple ecosystems around the world just because she felt bad for... Oh my god. Although I will say, I hated that movie, but it did set up for a really cool sequel that's supposed to be coming out in the next year, because the idea of the third one being like, oh, dinosaurs have been released and they've repopulated and now it's just normal to see dinosaurs around. Well, that is such a cool idea for a sequel, actually, so I'm excited for that.
I will tell you, when I was a kid, like 5, 6, 7. I think I saw parts of Jurassic Park for the first time. I actually had a dream about that. I had a dream that dinosaurs were normal, and like when they would walk by, the stuff would fall off our walls, and that irritated me. I was like, I've had that dream. What you described, like I've had that dream, but going back, so I will say, and that is something that made this film easier to deal with, is the lack of collateral damage.
The collateral damage is caused by the villain, and it's a pretty like the Terminator T-1000, the upgraded version in this one, is so scary. He's, and partly because he can change shape. Like, ooh, what a creepy monster, and that was kind of the thing. Like, James Cameron had the idea for this monster, and so that's where he's like, we need something that doesn't exist yet. Computer generated images, what can they do? Oh, it's a form of animation, and he worked with them like, oh, this is exactly what I want, and I want it to look like this and stuff like that. So like, that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, where he has an idea and he's like, I need technology to catch up with me.
I think in the entire movie,
because of him,
I'm sorry, got lost in my train of thought.
Oh no, you're fine.
I think in the entire movie, and I'm only keep going back to this, is such a big deal for me. I only counted like 4 collateral fatalities. I'm sorry, 5, because there was that guy at the mall. There was that trucker at the end. Then there was his foster parents. I know his foster parents are set up to kind of be like bad people, but because we really
they were just jerks. Well, they weren't bad people. I know, but they were just sort of like.
But we also only get that
John was being a shithead.
Yeah,
too,
so that's I was kind of like, he's not exactly a reliable narrator there when he's telling people they're obnoxious, and this kid's over here embezzling money from banks. So who's really the villain here?
Yeah, so like, and that too, I don't think John wanted them to die.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that was kind of, it's just the Terminator, that was its thing. Like, oh, I lost him, let's go
so
back to
I do need to do full disclosure here, because like I said, I've seen like very brief scenes of this throughout the year. So I knew the scene with the parents. I did fast forward that 30 seconds. I'm like, I don't want to see that.
Did you end up watching? Because I said you did not need to see the first one, and I still maintain that. Anyone who hasn't seen the first Terminator who's listening to this, even though we spoiled a big chunk of it already, like if you're still thinking of seeing this movie, you do not need to see the first Terminator. Sarah Connor is kind enough to basically explain the first movie in the first 5 minutes, and then you're off and running. Like, this essentially is almost like this. Like, there's a couple of ways to do sequels. There's either the bigger sequel. There's the one where you take the characters from the first movie and put them in a situation that just sort of expands on their characters. Or there's the type of sequel where you take the character, like this is like Indiana Jones, where you just put them in a similar sort of predicament. It's like remaking the first movie. Like, another example would be like Home Alone 2, where it's the same movie again. So this sequel is like the bigger version that I was talking about, where you take the same premise as the first movie, but just make it bigger.
Well, but it gave it a twist too. There's
exactly, there is a twist as well, but like pretty much like this. I usually recommend this instead of the first one, because you don't need to have seen the first one, and this does everything the first one did but better. I would say if you like this movie, the first one's worth checking out, because you do miss out on a few things. Like, I don't know if you know this, because you said you did not watch the first one in preparation for
No,
this,
I did
right?
not. I went straight to this one.
So one of the interesting things that is in the first movie that, like, I'm sure you were wondering where John Connor's father is.
Yeah, oh yeah, she explains that.
That it was a guy from the future?
Right.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah, I guess she probably does.
I do have some questions when we get to it about the timeline. The timeline is a little weird to me.
It's a time travel movie.
Yeah.
It never, like, a lot of smarter movies have talked about this, but there's no such thing as a time travel movie that makes 100% sense.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's Back to the Future. It doesn't matter if it's this. It doesn't matter if it's whatever. Like, in fact, Rick and Morty, of all things, is made because since it's referencing Doc and Marty, like, always Rick and Morty fans were like, do a time travel episode, and Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon both are like, No, it's just asking for trouble because it's like it just confuses things. It makes like the story more convoluted and stuff. And you haven't seen any of the newer Terminator movies,
I
but
saw.
it is a mess. It is an absolute mess because every time it like that's the thing. Like so this one was all about like avoiding Judgment Day.
Mm-hmm.
In the next movie that you haven't seen yet, you find out that Judgment Day hasn't stopped. It's just been postponed to a later date.
But how?
So
There's
like,
literally
well,
no
then nothing
technology
mattered.
left. That's was the part that was baffling to me. So we have the inventor is dead. They've destroyed all the information that they had. Essentially, once they threw that final chip in there, the other Terminators should have disappeared.
Yep. Well, I mean, so the
and then they're like, "Oh, well, I'm still here."
Because no, because that was the point. Is Arnold had a chip in him,
but he wouldn't have been invented because everything would have been destroyed.
Not until he destroyed himself, because until he destroyed himself, there was another chip in him. So until he melted himself, someone could have like gotten a chip from him at a future date. And you know what I mean?
Okay. The time travel movies, when they're movies where you have to actually know the timeline, they make my head hurt. Like
Actually, hilariously, I was watching the second Austin Powers movie recently, and they made a joke about that where it's like they're explaining how the time travel works, and Austin Powers goes cross-eyed trying to think about it, and it's there you go. Like that is what I mean when I say like people like time travel movies don't take it too seriously. The movie Looper. Straight up, like Bruce Willis is like, just don't think about it too hard. There's a reason. Like, I don't even think time travel literally could be possible if we traveled at the speed of light, because I think it would just destroy reality. Like nothing. It's so dangerous that it would just ruin everything.
Right.
So yeah, like, but anyway, like the logic is that like as long as Arnold like the inventor only knew about the technology because he found the chip from the robot in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Arnold is the same robot as the robot in the first movie. So he had a chip in him.
Okay.
So the idea is, even though they destroyed the chip, another scientist could, like, you know, if they somehow crushed Arnold to death or somehow made it so that he stopped working, another scientist could find him and remove his chip, and then it would start all over again.
So speaking of this whole thing, so essentially there shouldn't be basically a third Terminator movie shouldn't even be possible, because the guy who came up with the concept is dead. All of his research is destroyed. There are no chips for anybody to reference. So how did they keep the saga going? What is it Terminator 3 if only we hadn't destroyed the chip?
It keeps changing its mind. It's a franchise, and that's the thing. James Cameron has not touched the franchise. Like he basically is like, yeah, whatever, do whatever you want, but he has not made a new Terminator movie himself since Terminator 2, because he knew this is it. This is all I can do with this concept. So it's 20th Century Fox, and now Disney owns Terminator, so who knows what they're going to do. But 20th Century Fox, for the entire time they had the IP, it was just them desperately trying to revive interest in it, but making the story more complicated. The one, I think it was called Terminator Genesis, they had a twist where John Connor was a Terminator made out of nano machines.
Uh-huh.
Think about that. Think about how confusing that is. Like, wait, what? So, like, and it's a mess. Like, that's the thing. And that's part of the reason this is, like, where the franchise should have ended, is because if you try and expand on it anymore, it becomes so ludicrous that it just makes no sense. And if you're curious, the premise of Terminator 3 is, as I said, no matter what you do, Judgment Day is always going to come. It's, like, set in stone. It's like fate. So there is a new Terminator that's even more advanced than the T-1000 that gets sent back, and the Terminators have given up on Sarah and John Connor, and now they're killing off all of the generals that serve under John Connor. So they're just going to all these random people and killing them, because in the future they're going to be like the big commanders that fight against the Terminators.
Wait, but see,
and then John Connor gets wind of it, and then another Arnold Schwarzenegger is sent back to be his bodyguard, and the two of them team up to like stop the new Terminator. But it's just like a rehash of Terminator 2, but with a weaker story.
That makes no sense to me, because they wouldn't exist.
And that is why Terminator has been dying ever since the second one.
So
because,
basically,
again,
James Cameron...
He didn't even purposefully. He knew that he couldn't outdo this movie. So like, if it were up to him, there would be no more Terminator movies, because he knew, like, this is the best it's going to get with this premise. Like, you can't keep changing time without it getting completely stupid. So he bowed out. Like, he's like, hey, you guys own it. Like, I'll stay on as a producer or whatever, but I have nothing to do with these, essentially. It's like, I mean, it's kind of like, imagine if they tried to make like a Titanic sequel. That movie is like, how would you expand on that?
They technically did. It's called Titanic 2. It's on another fated ship that wanted to tempt fate, and they called it Titanic, but it takes place in the modern day. But it's off. It's really bad.
But it wasn't made by James Cameron.
It wasn't, but I think it was 20th Century Fox. But it's just bad. It's really bad.
That's pretty pathetic if it was.
No, I was gonna bring something up actually about that, and I'm trying to remember what it was. So because I know you said that you don't need to see the first one to appreciate this one, but this one though I have noticed because I have seen over the years, I looked stuff up, that they have this is considered, I think, the 8th greatest sci-fi film ever made. The first one's not even on the list. But it's recognized.
I'm down with that.
It's recognized by the AFI as that, and I know for those of you that are international, the AFI is the American Film Institute. They usually only rank American-made movies, so they're not saying overall, but just a frame of reference to how influential this film is that it has. Then I believe it's also been selected for preservation by the National Film Registry as well. Oh,
for sure. There's no question. This movie's never going to go away. Like, this is such a big.
Do you know what the X-Files tie-in is?
No, actually.
So the X-Files was on forever. At the end of season 7, David Duchovny left the show as a regular. But they needed to have some sort of dynamic there, so they brought on another agent by the name of Doggett, and he is played by Robert Patrick. So when I was watching this, I was just like, oh look, it's Agent Doggett. Oh, his facial expressions didn't change really from anything else.
Yeah, man. You never got to experience this, I bet. Somewhat on topic, but it doesn't exist anymore, but Universal Studios used to have a Terminator attraction. Mm-hmm. It was a 3D movie thing, but what I thought was so cool about it was that it had live actors. So, like, a Terminator literally came out of the screen and, like, was fighting, like, in the audience and stuff on top of the 3D, and that just made it so much cooler. Like, I always love attractions that actually involve, like, human... And so it's like the Jungle Cruise at Disney. Like, the ride isn't that spectacular, but the skippers make it the best thing, right? And it got replaced with the Despicable Me ride, and I don't want to hate on kids. I don't want to hate on a kids ride, but I'm always like, couldn't you guys have done the same thing at least? Like, I don't care if it's like a kids thing, but couldn't you have like done like a sort of 3D movie live thing instead of it just being another motion simulator ride?
Yeah, well, simulators are cheaper over time for them to do.
I know, but so are 3D movies. Yeah. Like, obviously, you gotta hire people to, like, act out and stuff, but it was very cool to, like, it felt really real. And now, I wish it was still around so you could experience it, because it was really awesome, and I miss it a lot.
Is it like an actual replacement, or is it like what Disney did with the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, where they just
it's a full-blown, like, they demolished the old thing. Like, it's in the same location, and I think... I mean, like, they're both kind of 3D movies. Like, they did demolish it. Like, there's no remnants of the old one, which is what's sad. And I understand. It's like Terminator wasn't relevant anymore. It's just, again, it wasn't so much that it was Terminator. It was the way the attraction was made that made it so cool.
Well, the Haunted Mansion at Disney used to have actors in it, too. Instead of it just being the animatronic, I guess when it first launched, but they stopped because people were getting freaked out and attacking the actors.
No, I did hear that. That was like really early though. That was like the first few weeks of it being open.
But back on topic, one of the things I want to talk about, and I know this is sacrilege, and I know people are going to be upset about this, is at least in this movie, the character of Sarah Connor, she got on my nerves. Like,
interesting.
Like, at least, like, John was an obnoxious kid at the beginning, but he kind of gets his act together when he realizes the stakes. And Sarah, through no fault of her own, really, but the way she would make things unnecessarily difficult for everybody else in there. Like, when like, the first time that I had an issue with her, and it really didn't matter because she was going to escape anyway, but when they'd already said, we're not going to let you out, we think you're just acting or whatever, and then she decides, oh, okay, the best course of action is then to attack the doctor, that'll make me get out, not in 6 months. There was the way when she was when they were escaping the hospital, and she was shooting, and it's like she couldn't hit anything. There was just stuff just about her in this movie that just irritated me. And I know everybody's gonna be like, she's such an important character. She is. And maybe this, I don't know if it was just because I've only seen her in this, but the fact that they had to go back and get her, she was kind of an extra side piece. Basically, the character of Sarah at this point is essentially, from my understanding, is basically irrelevant now that John's born. So the fact that they kept trying to protect her and do it for her really just got on my nerves, because I was like, we don't, just ditch her, kick her to the curb, we don't need her anymore. She's basically slowing you down. And then
well, Sweet Tea, I guess I need to tell you this, but men only want one thing, and it's disgusting.
Oh my god.
And it's Sarah Connor in Terminator 2. But no, well, first off, they saved her because John wanted to save his mom.
Yeah.
And I think he felt kind of guilty because he thought she was crazy, because of course you're going to think that she's crazy if she's talking about killer robots from the future. But and that's the other thing too. Like, I know what you mean. It's also frustrating when she goes off to kill the guy by himself. But it's like, she is so paranoid and traumatized by the first movie, that it's like, this is how you would act if a killer robot were sent back to kill you. You would lose your damn mind, you know? And it's like she obviously wasn't actually crazy or delusional, but like, she was very paranoid, because the thing about Terminators, they always look like Arnold in the movies, but the idea is that they could look like anyone. Mm-hmm. For what, I guess because Arnold was everyone's favorite, they kept making the Terminators look like Arnold, but the point is that anyone could be a Terminator. And I think that's also why they, changed it to the T-1000 and got a different actor, was like, oh, we don't want it to always be Arnold. Like, maybe we could have a shapeshifter or something. And I also think, yes, I think you'd like her a lot more in the first movie, because she's not a hardened badass. She is like a scared...
She's a waitress.
Minimum wage working waitress. Yeah. Like, she is a classic heroine, like, protagonist. Like, the whole hero's journey thing you could apply to Sarah Connor. Like, there's The Call, there's all of those, hero with 1,000 faces things you could apply to Sarah Connor, and she's a lot more likable. She's a lot less... Again, she's not the sort of person to like curse you out, or like, the big change. It's a huge change from the first movie. Like, the fact she's super buff, it makes, like, the idea is that after the first movie, she like went to Mexico, got ripped, learned how to do all of this crazy terrorist stuff, like learning to make bombs and pick locks and all of this other stuff, because she was essentially living on the run, not knowing if these Terminators were going to be after her again. So she is essentially a completely new character in the second movie.
There was something that comes up with her when she's at the hospital, and as soon as it happened, I'm like, oh god, I know why they did this. But to me, it came out of nowhere. I know why they did it, but it came out of nowhere to me, and I was just like, did we need this? So when she's pretending to be sedated or whatever, and that guy licks her face, I was like, okay, I know they did that because he's gonna die soon, and they don't want us to feel bad for him. But I was just like, that just came out of left field.
I don't know, man. There's a lot of reports of abuse in nursing homes and mental hospitals.
There is,
in
but...
morgues. Like, any sort of like position where you can abuse your power, there's going to be creeps. And actually, maybe we'll tackle this film in the future, but it kind of reminds me of a scene from Kill Bill Volume 1 that takes that and makes it worse.
My God.
So it's not like an unusual thing, but yeah, you're definitely right. I think it was mostly because he was going to get beaten to death by Sarah later on, and that also will make the audience feel really good that he got his comeuppance by his victim.
Yeah, it keeps her from coming across as like a murderer.
Yeah.
There was, and actually,
and that's the thing too. Like, she kind of goes off the deep end a little bit, but she at the heart is, she listens to John when he's like, "Don't kill the guy who made the Terminator. Show him what he did, and he'll be on our side." And then they do, and then he is. But yeah, like that's again, like she kind of, she's in a mental hospital for the wrong reasons, but she's kind of belongs there.
Yeah.
Just because she has extreme PTSD. So if she does not act rational, it's because she has like been extremely stressed for like the last 10 years or whatever. So.
Oh, it takes her a minute to. I do at least appreciate that they didn't make her turn on realizing Arnold was the good guy. They didn't make that instantaneous. Like, she goes along with it, but she still harbors some resentment. Like, she makes some comment about the killers all looking like, or something. She says something. She says something to be shady, and I it's a small thing, but I kind of like that because I was just like, okay, that's more realistic. Like, you're still gonna be, pretty resentful over over the person that caused you to be locked up forever and just trying to kill you. I did kind of like that. It was a small line, but I did appreciate what it added to it.
Absolutely. So this was a fun fact. I was gonna wait a little while, but so this movie is known for its CGI, but just like any other movie James Cameron's done, there's plenty of cool practical effects, and this one I actually wonder if so there are a couple of instances of the T-1000 duplicating people and being next to them.
Yeah.
And that actually is not CGI. I don't know if you know this,
that was makeup?
No. So the first one instance, it's not actually the T-1000, but so I don't know if you know, Linda Hamilton has a twin sister.
What? She's an identical.
Her name's Leslie Hamilton Guerin. She is not a professional actress.
Oh my god!
But they have used her in these movies and other movies with Linda Hamilton, sometimes as a double. So there's that scene where Linda Hamilton is fixing up the Terminator in a mirror, and normally you would have to, use special effects for that, but no. Instead, up close near the camera is a body double of Arnold. And then there's Linda Hamilton's sister. And then in the mirror, it's real Arnold and Linda Hamilton. And so Linda Hamilton's sister is like mirroring her. So that's like a thing. The other time is with that security guard who dies at the mental hospital.
What? Wait, which one?
He has a twin. So the actor's name was Don Stanton, and his brother's name's Dan Stanton. So when the T-1000 duplicates that security guard and then, kills him by the snack machine, those are two twin brothers.
That's odd. See, now that just makes me uncomfortable.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's actually an old magic trick.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you know, but the disappearing, reappearing man, or just like any sort of thing, it's common in magic to use lovely assistants, quote unquote, or yourself if you have a twin, for effects like that where you need to like disappear and reappear in different places. Yeah. So it's a very old school trick. And it's something I've seen other people talk about it, but again, this is a movie where it's like, oh, it's super heavy in the CGI. Not really. The special effects shots mostly have to do with the T-1000, but a lot of other stuff is practical. The car chases are real. The famous one in the LA River with the truck, that's real. I had to explosions and stuff.
I had to explain her. She's like, "Are there just like a whole bunch of these like things?" I'm like, "No, it's like one. It's like one like drainage ditch that is called the LA River."
Right. It does actually. Apparently, so times in the year it does have water in it, and I actually saw a thing. I forget if it was on YouTube or on TV. There are people who kayak the LA River at certain times of the year when there's water in it, and
that's weird.
Crazy.
Because
it's crazy to me that there's ever enough water for you to do that.
Well, my favorite part is that it's a river. because I was just like, that's a drainage ditch. What are you talking?
Welcome to California, where we don't have any water. Also, like, just another random fun facts about myself. The mall that appears in the movie is the Glendale Galleria.
I was trying to figure out which
shopping mall.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out which one it was.
It's the Glendale Galleria. And actually, it was crazy watching it this time and knowing, because last time I watched it, I like realized it was the Glendale Galleria and it blew my mind. And then this time watching it, knowing it was the Glendale Galleria, I was like recognizing stuff. Like when John's running from the T-1000 on his little dirt bike, I'm like, I know exactly where that is. I use that parking garage all the time. I know exactly where they shot this. It's fun. But yeah, I'm glad you were enlightened by the whole twin thing. Might be fun to even rewatch those scenes.
So now I'm just
like, oh my God.
And I want to be like, which one is the twin? I mean, obviously the one that's not them, but I just want to look as close as possible to see if I can find any sort of difference at all.
Right? Well, and same thing, like Linda Hamilton's twin, it's because they've used her for other like things. Again, she's not the actress Linda is, but they've used her as body doubles in other movies and stuff like that. Also, don't know if you knew, but I believe it was during this movie before they got divorced, but Linda Hamilton was married to James Cameron.
Oh, she was. Mm-hmm. That makes it a little saucy. I'm just...
Right? I think they were still married when T2 came out. Eventually they got divorced. He's had a couple of interesting wives. The other one is Catherine Bigelow, fellow director.
Yeah, I know her. Well, I know of her.
Yeah. You should check her out. It's funny because she does action movies too, which, it's funny. I'm sure lots of people assume like, oh, a woman director probably does romance movies. Yeah. No, man. She does like badass like action movies. Like in the 90s, it was Point Break.
Yeah.
And then she did The Hurt Locker and tons of other stuff. She's actually made more movies than I've seen of hers, and I should probably check more of her stuff out.
Well,
but I loved 2009 Oscars were hilarious, man. I love that they sat her directly in front of James Cameron, and then she won Best Director.
Well, one of the things I wanted to bring up was what was it? And so I actually saw a direct kind of, or maybe an indirect reference. So you've watched Firefly, right? The series.
Yeah.
So I was like, when I was watching this, I'm like, this has to be a reference, because this came first and Firefly came later. But I'm like, I bet you Joss is trying to reference the good Terminator's actions in here, because if you look, he always shoots people in the knee. That's like his go-to spot to shoot people. And in Firefly, there's that character that was he's a shepherd, he's basically a preacher. His name's Book. And there's been some scenes where they've been, at battle in that show. And he's just over there. He's over there shooting at people. And one of the characters asks him, "Preacher, don't the Bible have some pretty specific things to say about killing?" And he says, "Quite specific. It is, however, somewhat fuzzier on the subject of kneecaps." So the fact that character...
I think that's more that kneecapping has existed. Like, that's a thing you do to, disable an opponent. It's, so I don't even think, that's not a James Cameron thing either. It's like, if you're trying to incapacitate an enemy, shooting them in the kneecaps both is incredibly painful, and it makes it so they can't stand up anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe
I
feel like it
maybe it's a reference, but not really. But that's what I was thinking.
I don't think. I doubt it. I mean, I'm sure he's probably a fan of the movie. But again, it's like the same thing in Terminator 2. I don't think that it's a deliberate decision just because that's a thing that you would do if you wanted to prevent someone from shooting at you anymore, but you didn't want to kill them. It's like the same thing as like shooting the gun out of their hand. Like, except that's probably even worse because that can maim your hand so you wouldn't be able to use it later. Like kneecaps, again, it's painful, it prevents you from standing up, and it's not going to like cripple you forever from what I understand. So it's...
Well, it depends on how old you are. If you're kind of old,
it depends on how old you are. It also, it depends on other things, but
Well, I really appreciated that. I appreciated that he was... Well, one of my favorite parts that I like is when he goes to the window, he's just blowing up all the police cars. And then at the end, he does a scan, and it says casualties 0.
Yep.
I was he.
Again,
it's like he's just like, let me just to confirm. I just want to make sure.
Well, he has to. He's programmed to do what John says.
Well, and then there was another thing. There's the only thing that really sort of bothered me about this movie, and I want to see if you caught this. And it really kind of more has to play into specific topics and problems that we as a society are realizing now. When the SWAT team, I guess, comes in, the only character that's present is the African American scientist, and they just open fire. And I'm like, really?
So it might actually be intentional. So recently, within the last year, James Cameron came out after the whole protests that were going on last year, and I almost wrote it down, but I didn't know if we were ever going to like really talk about it in the review, and I know we try and kind of avoid any like political hot takes or whatever, but he essentially said I agree with what the protesters are saying. It was intentional that the T-1000 took the form of a police officer. You know, they abused their power or something. I should have written down his little statement on it, but considering he said that, assuming he's not just, you know,
it was
going
a commentary
in the moment. If that is true, then what you're thinking might actually be pretty intentional.
Right.
Because if that was an intentional move to make the T-1000 always look like a police officer, you know, them firing on the one African American character, who also, that's pretty progressive, making the scientist a black guy, you know, and not making him some sort of ghetto stereotype, like, oh man, I'm a scientist, but I'm a cool scientist.
Right.
Like, no, he's, you know, that was also something you didn't see very often. Even, again, talking about Jurassic Park, it's like you did have a cool black scientist in Jurassic Park, but it was Samuel Jackson, and he said things like, hold on to your butts.
Oh my God.
Which is awesome. I love his character in Jurassic Park, but, you know, a little bit more
well, that makes me
more stereotypical.
That makes me respect this movie more, that was supposed to be a commentary. And you really, knowing that information, that's how he feels about certain things, and that was intentional, it's almost like when he comes in to the world and he takes the form of the cop, it's almost as though people have talked about corruption in police being like a poison that spreads. It's kind of like that. It kills off the good cop and makes, there's like just so much to go from with that, knowing that he said that was intentional about how they abuse their power and how they do this. That is all that to me gives us like a whole nother layer of depth to it that I wasn't aware of.
Well, and like the idea of like using an authority figure to get access to things or abuse power, it's a scary notion. I mean, I shared with you one of my favorite movies of all time, which, you know, tweet at us or whatever if you want me to talk about this more on the show, but like The Night of the Hunter, you've got the preacher character who's a murderer. But everyone just takes whatever he says as for granted because, oh, well, he's a preacher, he's a good man. And it's kind of the same deal, you know, these people see, like John's foster parents, you know, if a stranger came to their house and was asking, oh, hey, where's John? They wouldn't tell them anything, but the fact it's a police officer, it's like, ooh, he must be in trouble again. Well, I don't know, he drove off, here's a picture of him, you know, it's scary because it's like this is an authority figure you're supposed to trust, but you can't. So
well, there's that, and then I don't know where I'm from. There's a lot of former military here, and people have a tendency to just take what veterans say at their word. Like there's been cases here where they've been like, well, we didn't investigate further because he was a war hero, and I saw no reason to doubt his word.
That's stuff, man. I mean, like, I respect veterans,
but they're people. They can do wrong things too.
Yeah, and, you know, PTSD can lead you to do some pretty nasty things too. Like, there's a difference between respect and, like,
loyalty.
Just absolving of any responsibility. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you're still a citizen, and at the point you are not in the military, you're a civilian now.
Yeah.
You know, I respect you. I thank you for your service, but sorry, man. Like, if you're in a sketchy situation, you should probably be investigated, probably cooperate.
Right.
But, yeah. So I'm actually, I was wondering if you were gonna like this movie, and it sounds like for the most part you did. I do think you, just based on what you said about Sarah Connor, I actually think you would like the first movie more, just because I think you would find her much more relatable. Because she's just a normal girl, you know? She's like in her mid-20s. She's like talking about like, oh, I wish I had a boyfriend and all of these other, you know, she's normal. She's a normal woman. And that's kind of what makes it's so jarring in this movie to see her as like this unhinged badass. Is it's like the change from the first to the second movie.
Well, I wanted to share kind of a Terminator fact with you that's come up. It's sort of a fact. It's not really a fact. I'll just tell you what it is. So, you know, I'm a huge fan of the show The Golden Girls. Love it. 10 out of 10.
Oh, you don't say.
So there's an episode that they actually do where they talk about the issue of illegal immigration. And basically, one of the characters, Dorothy's teaching or tutoring a young student who turns out he's a very, very young Mario Lopez. But he turns out he's undocumented. INS comes and look for him. And she goes to find him because he always talked about how he felt the most at home in a movie theater. And she goes, and he's watching this like really violent movie. And so she comes in because she's trying to get him to. She's like, "Look, we need to figure out a way to get out of the safely." And so she's talking. She's like, "Oh my god, I didn't realize ripping a person's nose off would leave that big of a hole." She's talking about how violent this movie is, and then she makes comments. She's like, "Look, Arnold Schwarzenegger is an immigrant into this country, and so it's always been understood because of the violence and the fact that it's Arnold Schwarzenegger that they're watching Terminator." They never actually say Terminator because I don't think it's owned by ABC. It's not. It wasn't owned by Disney yet, so they can't say Terminator, but they can describe it and mention Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's
funny because I don't think anything that violent even happens in the movie. This is a movie and same thing with the first Terminator movie. These are kind of like borderline. It is rightfully rated R, but this is like something I don't think is that far off. I think I saw this when I was like 13. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like The Matrix is another one where I'm like, it's R. Actually, The Matrix is one I don't even think should have been rated R. But this movie specifically, it's like it's one of those where I kind of feel like it's violent, but it's not to the point of it being like gratuitous.
Yeah.
Like, I think you could show this to someone a little younger and it won't disturb them.
Yeah, and of course...
probably the most disturbing thing that happens in the movie is Sarah's really scary nuke dream.
Yeah.
Where she, gets blown into a skeleton like that.
I did get heads up about that. I was they were like, we know you don't like breakdown of society, will this bother you? And I'm like, no, because it's not really happening. It's a dream sequence, it should be okay. That was fun. That was a very interesting take. You know what it reminded me? Do you remember, I don't know if you ever watched this in school, but do you remember it was when Lyndon B. Johnson was running for president, I think the second time.
Oh yeah.
The Daisy ad. Do you remember the Daisy ad?
Of course.
Yeah, that's like
I watched it in my rhetoric class in college.
Maybe that's where I was, but that was like the first thing I thought of. That was like the first thing I thought of when I saw it. I mean, it's not as graphic, but it's the same sort of idea. So there was that, but like you said, for most younger people, it would be fine. I'm in a weird case where I have this thing about collateral damage that really bothers me, and
but that's the thing. There's not a lot of collateral damage. There really is.
And that's why I think it was and unfortunately they reference a scene from the first one several times, and I was like, this is the reason why I don't watch Terminator movies. It's always bothered me. It's when the
first one, I feel like that is the worst scene in the first one because
what I'm talking about.
It's the famous line, "I'll be back." Like, so Sarah Connor and the guy from the future, they've been running from the Terminator, and they go to a police station, and they're like, "Okay, we'll be safe here." Like, or at least maybe the guy from the future is like, "No, we won't." Whatever. Like, they're hiding out in a police station. It's full of cops. They think like, okay, we'll be safe. And he's like, I've come for Sarah Connor. And they're like, get out of here, buddy. And then he like looks at them and goes, I'll be back. And then he comes back with a bunch of guns and shoots up a police station. That is probably the most collateral damage in the first movie.
And then, of course, they not only reference it, but then they do exactly what I do. They had families. They had lovers. They had children. And I was like, I know. That's why I can't deal with this.
Isn't it annoying though that they were doing that to Sarah?
Yeah, it's like
she was.
It wasn't. Yeah,
it's like she. Why do you think she's in cahoots with him? She was running.
She was running from this dude.
Like, I know it's like they know that she probably isn't in cahoots. It's like, hey, you're too scared to say who this man is, but it's like. Ugh, it's just so obnoxious. It's like, guys, she thinks, even if you don't believe it's a robot, she thinks it's a robot, and she's told you a million times it's a robot. Do you ever think maybe the scary man with the guns convinced her he was a robot? Like, maybe you shouldn't be trying to guilt trip her into it's. Ew.
So
that mental hospital, man.
I did notice an inconsistency, and I want your opinion on if it was intentional, accidental, or what. There was an inconsistency on sort of the morality of the bad Terminator. And again, I know he's a robot, he doesn't have morality, but it was, to me, they happened so close together that I was just like, really? So remember, he jumps on the helicopter and gets in the helicopter, and then he tells the other guy to get out. He gives him a chance to live, basically, and tells him to get out. And the guy does.
Okay.
And then later, when that trucker approaches him, he's like, oh my God, are you okay? And he just like stabs him immediately. I was like, you could have like just breezed right by that guy. I think you would have been fine, sir. And so I was just, since those scenes happened so close together, I was trying to understand what the difference in the first time as opposed to the second time, or if there was something I missed.
It's one of those things where it's like, if they had gone through another pass on the screenplay and you had been in the room to say something, it might have been worth like cutting out one of them or making one more consistent.
Yeah.
With the helicopter, I think it was just like they needed a cool thing to happen, because part of it was like it was a little bit humorous to see the dude react to the guy in liquid form go get out, you know, and it's funny because he's like shocked and he just jumps out of a helicopter that's really high up, because it's like, oh, to hell with this. So that's why it was written that way.
Okay.
It's like, oh, here's a little kind of like goofy moment. With the other one, it's an inconsistency for sure. Like, the thing with Terminators is they're machines. Like, and you said it already, like, they don't have morals one way or another. It's like, if you tell them to do something, they'll do it. It's like commanding your Alexa at home, you know?
Yeah.
It's like...
And we apologize to any of our listeners for just setting off your home devices. But go on.
Yeah, so it's like, so his mission was to kill John Connor. That is all he is there to do. Mm-hmm. So, like, my only thing to, like, explain it away would be, like, well, he's trying to get to John Connor, so, like, it's not important to kill the other person, or he's losing time trying to catch up to John Connor. But I do agree, like, there's inconsistencies, because it's the same thing with that other trucker that he, like, runs off the road near the end before they get to, like, the smelting factory or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, why did you do that? Like, why are you trying to run this guy over when you should be trying to catch up to John and Sarah, right? So, I don't know. I think with the helicopter, I know that it was just they wanted to have, like, a cool moment.
Yeah.
But with other things, I don't know. Like, also, same thing with...
I wasn't trying to be nitpicky.
Same thing with the foster parents, right? Like, well, same thing with the foster parents, right? Like... Again, it was like to show you, like, oh, it's a Terminator and oh, it's scary. But if you're thinking logically, like, why did the Terminator kill the dad?
Yeah.
You know, like, was he actually annoyed by him drinking milk? Or, like, you know, because he's a robot, he shouldn't care. So, like, it's one of those where you
actually,
take a lot of scenes and nitpick it.
I wasn't trying to, because it's legitimately, like, I'm trying to understand, you know, the logic here. Because, I understand possibly killing the mother because he needed to get into the house or whatever. And the dad obviously didn't know that she was dead yet, because he wouldn't be sitting there chilling, drinking milk.
Exactly.
So it's like you could have literally just done the scene and had him just like roll out of there. Because as soon as she was like, the way that John describes his parents, as soon as they were like, oh, we miss you, baby, where are you? And that was enough for everybody to know what was up.
Well, and also it's like, if it was a good Terminator, if it was smarter than it was, you could have used the dad. You could have been like, John's on the phone, and then the dad gets on and actually acts normal.
Yeah.
And then John would be like, I don't know, man. I don't think they're dead. Like, this sounds like my foster dad, and he could have easily tricked them into coming back.
Yeah.
So again, it's one of those. It's like the difference between a really good criticism and nitpicking, and not to say that you're wrong for nitpicking, because again, like any movie, you can sit down and be like, well, it doesn't make sense in this thing. Like, I think a lot of it is just kind of for the effect of drama or something.
And like I said,
what can we do to make this look cooler?
Well, and
like it doesn't make logical sense for the Terminator to kill some people, but it's like it's cinematic and cool, because why they did it was because they wanted to have her finger turn into a sword and stab him from across the room, because it's scary,
and I think
it's
that
visually interesting.
I think that's the first time that we see the sword power. I think
exactly, and so it's also to kind of establish that that's something it can do. So like that's the reason it happens. Like if this were reality, it wouldn't happen.
Well, if it was reality, we wouldn't have it happening.
And that's kind of the difference between writing a movie that's like engaging and writing
right.
it. And that's why realism is never really a way to go about doing a movie, unless that's your like intention.
Right, and like I said, I wouldn't have even noticed it if those two scenes that I described hadn't happened so close together.
Yeah, and also probably the fact that you have that thing about collateral damage.
Most people just be like,
more sensitive to it. Like, you're like, well, why did he have to die when this person didn't have to die?
Right? At least my thing would be, I would rather the guy in the helicopter die, because he goes into work knowing he could die.
Now he's got a cool story about, like, dude, there's friggin' liquid metal guy like jumped onto my helicopter. Oh, you're crazy, Callahan. Why do you telling your wild stories? You jumped out of that helicopter because you were drunk, and we all know it.
And so my last question is, it really has to do again with the Terminator mythology. And again, I'm not trying to nitpick. I just legitimately have questions about
fine,
things.
And for all I know, I might go cross-eyed trying to explain it to you. So ask away.
So we saw, when he's frozen with liquid nitrogen, he breaks up, right? He turns into those little pieces, and obviously, as we saw earlier, it was established earlier in the movie, the pieces have to be within so much of each other to really absorb all that fun stuff. And the reason they're able to get back together is because they melt again because of the heat, and they reform. So my question is, what happens when they use whatever steel is in that melting pot? Because now that's all in there, and it can go from liquid back to so what keeps that from reforming?
I think it's the heat, because the thing could turn into liquid at room temperature, but when you get to like heats that extreme, I think it melted whatever computers were like controlling the liquid metal.
Okay.
It was just like hot enough to destroy it. Like, so now it's, the metal is just like regular metal, I'm guessing. Again, like it's I don't think James Cameron and this other screenwriter are like actual scientists. I think it was just like, well, what can kill this?
God.
I don't know. Volcano?
Well, we're not in Hawaii, so we'll have to go to a smelting plant.
It's just kind of like if you're writing this movie, what would you think? Because like if it were me, I'd be like, well, I don't know, the liquid nitrogen, maybe that killed. Like it's kind of the rules you establish.
I will say, with Robert Patrick playing the bad Terminator, he had the whole vacant dead-eye stare down. The intense dead-eye stare. Creepy. Yeah, he's creepy. So that's why I was like, I think he was perfect to put in the X-Files. Because then it's weird because he doesn't look creepy. Because he comes in as, ironically, the skeptic. And so he's just like appalled and disturbed by everything he sees. So I just thought that was interesting to go from this to that.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like probably this is a more popular opinion than I think it is, but I actually I've seen both of the Terminator. I've seen plenty of the Terminator movies, and I actually think he's the creepiest one. Like, I didn't really find Arnold that intimidating.
He was cool looking.
Yeah, I understand why he was so popular. And also, like, halfway through the movie when half his face is missing and he's got, like, the metal half of his face exposed, like, that looks really cool and everything. But it's like, I don't know. Like, he never really scared me. Like, I knew what he was capable of, and that was scary, but I don't know. I think also it's like he played action heroes so frequently, and I'd seen so many of those movies that I was just like, But yeah, Robert Patrick, I think part of it is just how unassuming he is. It makes it so creepy. Yeah. Like, and again, the scariest thing about him isn't that he's physically imposing, it's that everyone will trust him and he can get people to listen to him and like turn, it's like, oh, so I'm a cop, so sorry, this man is I need to take him into custody. I need to ask him a few questions, and everyone will listen to him. Like, that is scarier to me than a big, unstoppable killing robot. Like, a killing robot that will do it and get away with that without drawing anyone's attention. That's so much scarier to me. So I always thought he was the creepier Terminator.
I think, in my opinion, just if I were to go back and watch the first ones, because from what you've described, Arnold's the bad guy in the first one. And to me, that would be too much of a mind bend. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Now we're bad? We're bad again?
Again, it's because he's a robot, so it's whatever. Like, the Terminator that they sent back in this one was a Terminator Terminator napped in the future, cracked his head open, and reprogrammed him so that
I was worried watching this. I guess not really worried, because like I said, I've seen how it ends via references and other stuff, but I actually had the question if, like, when the bad Terminator, severely damages him, and like shoves a pole through his power supply, I guess, I was like, oh my god, what if he undoes the rewiring?
Well, there you go. At least that left you worried enough that, like, even though you thought like you knew how the movie was gonna go, it left enough of a
because I knew
uncertainty in you that you thought, oh, maybe there's gonna be like a final twist or something. So that's kind of neat.
So I was like, oh, maybe, because I knew about the whole thumbs up thing, because I'd seen that on American Dad like at least 9 times. That same thing. I actually think one of them he melts into a bowl of cheese or something. So I knew that was coming, but then I was like, wait, maybe that's the wrong Terminator. But for the most part, and actually, I was thinking back about, and I know I keep going on, but I keep finding stuff to talk about with this movie, because this is one I thought I was going to have a lot of questions, and now that I'm thinking about it, I do. The way they play the beginning, how the two Terminators come to be, he pretty much states from the beginning who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. Because like, if you think about, if we think about the bikers as an outlaw biker gang, we have this guy come.
If you're watching it as someone who understands film, then I think you could probably see it coming.
Yeah.
But again, it was the way it was marketed, and again, if you aren't knowing that, it would make sense, especially if you're going into a sequel as like the bigger sequel, that it's like, oh, now there's 2 Terminators. So it's like, if you're thinking of it retrospectively, it makes sense. Like, oh, he attacked the bikers and the other person killed a police officer. Obviously, the one who attacked the bikers
I don't think he kills
him. Guy.
I don't think he kills the police officer. I know literally everyone thinks this, but the guy is like on the ground moaning as he's putting the outfit on and gets into the car. So I don't think he's dead. So I took some solace in that.
Well, there you go. I mean, even going off of what you said, it's like, oh, well, there you go. Neither of them kill anyone, so it could be up in the air.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
best scene, and I will put that this is the best scene in the movie, when that guy's like, you can't just take that boy's bike, and he like goes, you think he's gonna like choke the guy, and he just takes the sunglasses to complete the look. That's
well, I also like just the way he snatches the shotgun out of his hands. Like, he doesn't even need to kill him. Just doing that scares the guy enough to like make him back down.
I thought we were gonna do like a Wonder Woman 1984 thing, where it was like he crushes it and goes, "I hate guns" or something like that.
No, he loves guns. He's a Terminator.
Is he a Terminator, or we have the Terminator and then we have the Preserver?
But yeah, no, like, so this movie, and that's the other kind of cool thing, is the pacing is great. Like, there's never really like there is like some breathing room, but like after like an hour and a half of the movie, like right from the get-go, it's like there's not a lot of like wasting time. Like, it's just boom, 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 next thing happening.
And I would argue that most of the extreme things happen in well, at least as far as like actual violence happens in the first part of the movie. There's lots of explosions and shootouts, but not violence later in the movie for the most part.
Yes, exactly. All of the most shocking, scary stuff, like the parents getting killed and stuff like that, happens early on. But like early, like so around Christmas of last year, I called this, along with Die Hard, like one of the platinum standard action movies, like one that you should see if you like action movies or if you want to write action movies.
Yeah.
Another one I would consider platinum, I might consider for next season. But what did you? It sounds like you liked this. So this was one that you did enjoy.
I enjoyed this movie. I would recommend this movie. I just wish. It sounds sad. It sounds bad, but I wish it hadn't been as popular as it was, so that I could kind of get more of the full experience of seeing it for the first time.
I know what you mean. I hate, dude. Like,
it's a double-edged sword.
It's something that pissed my dad off when I was a kid, because like it's not just this movie, it's like all popular movies. There's a lot of really cool like moments that you really shouldn't have ruined. I mentioned Star Wars before, but I will say, like, anyone who's ever heard of the show Recess that used to be on Disney,
yes,
they did an episode that parodied 2001: A Space Odyssey. And so they straight up tell you the whole twist about Hal being able to read lips.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey, my dad was like, watch this part. And I was like, he's reading their lips. And he's like, what? And I'm like, this has been parodied on a cartoon show I watched. And he was like, that it was fucked up. Like, that ruins it.
And it's like...
You know, and I agree, like, to an extent. It's like, you know, it is a part of pop culture. And it's like, yeah, if you haven't seen Terminator by a certain point, maybe you're living under a rock. But there's this weird thing, and that's part of the reason, you know, we do spoil movies on this show, but we tell you ahead of time. You know,
yeah, it's in our opening.
Honestly,
it's in our opening.
Well, and honestly, like, I don't know if I've said this on our show before, but maybe this is the first time. Like, I would recommend, if you are a fan of our show, if you think you want to hear us talk about a movie, watch it first along with us. And we do try and watch things that are available on streaming when they come out. So if you won't see an episode that you want to hear us talk about, but you haven't seen the movie, I'd recommend see the movie. Like, I know we end the show with like recommending or not recommending, but if you don't want it to be spoiled, but you do like hearing the show, I'd say check it out. And lately, our track record, we've been recommending more movies than we've been saying pass. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. It's pretty safe bet.
We're trying not to be that professor that you and I both had, where he would basically read the DVD information from the back of the box and spoil the twist in the movie.
That's the thing with that class.
At least American Dad. It's not that it's. At least American Dad had the class to say, like, he says, and I love this because it's so funny. He was like, it's like when I went and saw The Sixth Sense and promised never to reveal to anyone the twist at the end that Haley Joel Osment's the same kid from AI. And it's like it's not.
See,
it's like there's a twist, but not ruining it for everybody.
That's funny, but like also, I mean, hey, there's an Adam Sandler movie, 50 First Dates, where they straight up reveal the twist of that movie at a part like where, you know, so a character's like, oh my god, I can't believe he was a ghost at the end, and it's just like, why are you, like, it's to the point where I kind of hate referential humor, like the sort of ones that you see in Family Guy and American Dad, because it's like there's no joke. The joke is, oh, I recognize that from this movie, and that's not a punchline. That's like oh, hi, I watched a movie.
Well, for the most part, in my experience, a lot of the stuff I'd seen referenced and parodied, I didn't know what it was. But when I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, this looks familiar. Oh, this looks... So it's not like I went into this knowing A, B, and C would happen. It was like, oh, yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Okay. And then he's going to get shot.
For sure.
So I'm okay with referential humor, but I appreciate referential humor that knows... I mean, especially nowadays, people are very anti-spoilers for the most part. But... for the most part, I think there's like an unspoken rule now, and at least in some circles that I've seen them do TV where they reference stuff, that they don't spoil anything, you know.
Yes, and again, like, I think it's just because referential humor has gotten really lazy. I'm not saying there's not a way to do it, but it's just, again, it's like, is the joke, oh, hey, that was in Terminator? Because that's not funny. You know, it's like as much as like the opening greeting for this episode, it was cute, but I wouldn't say it was like super funny.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like in the Lego movie, Wild Style, when she greets Emmett, says, "Come with me if you want to not die," And
exactly, like, that's kind of clever,
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, she said the thing, but she also screwed it up. Like, that's at least something.
Yeah.
And also, like, like the whole thumbs up sinking into the butter in American Dad, that's kind of okay too, because it's like, it doesn't spoil a major plot point or something.
Well, it,
like,
it does a thumbs up, and then he rotates his hand, and it's the middle finger.
And there you go. It's like a joke, at least. Like, the joke is like, oh, anyway. But I know what you mean. The frustrating thing is it's not the movie's fault.
Yeah, it's not.
It's like the people who were so untalented that they needed to talk about the movie to seem cool. And I'm not talking about American Dad.
Yeah, we like American Dad here. Well, the early stuff.
Yeah, it's well, and that's it. I mean, it's just the abundance of it, and it's not just this movie too. Again, it's like technically 2001: Space Odyssey was sort of ruined for me. It didn't bother me all that much as a kid. And I don't think it took too much out of
I
the
still have an
movie.
axe to grind about Sixth Sense. I'm still mad AF about that.
Well, and same thing like Star Wars, it's nice that everyone has seen it and everything, but you're kind of ruining the movie for, like, at some point someone hasn't seen the movie. Yeah. Babies are born all the time, and I'm sorry they don't come out of the womb having seen Star Wars, so being like, Luke, I am your father, cute, but it's not that funny, and it's also like, I don't know, I understand where my dad was coming from, because it is irritating, and it's like, what is the point of you talking about this kind of thing? But I am glad, besides that, you enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it. Like I said, my biggest complaint was just that it was too popular, too influential, and it wasn't spoiled, but it was just, there wasn't really suspense for me. But I enjoyed it. The story was interesting. The characters were interesting. I really liked the fact that John Connor, who's kind of a snot at the beginning, turns around when he realizes the stakes. Something about that is kind of cool to me. There's almost nothing to hate in this movie. Like I said, my big thing has always just been collateral damage, but that's a me thing. That's not a movie thing.
Technically, there was more collateral damage in Titanic.
That is actually true. But again, that's one of those blind spots I have. Well, I'm like, well, it's rough. Like when you and I went and saw Hotel Mumbai. There is so much in that, but it's telling his story. It's telling an event, though.
Well, like, not last episode, but again, like the Poseidon Adventure, tons of collateral damage in that movie.
And I don't know.
I know what you mean, though. It's like it's like a disaster rather than a killer robot.
Right,
so
it's different now. Like if somebody had come on the ship and we walked up to everybody and stabbed them individually, that would be a little more disturbing to me. Anyway, this is definitely a recommend for me.
Obviously it's a recommend for me.
Really?
This is like one.
Are you sure? It sounded like you weren't fans of it.
This is obviously like a movie you should see. I don't think you even have to be like an action fan or a sci-fi fan. It's just kind of one of those movies. It's got something for everybody. Yeah. And it's still aged well.
Except for romance, kind of the nice thing about
the simple Well, and that's the cool thing about the simple CGI in this movie, is because it's very bare bones, like, it hasn't aged well, or I mean, it has aged well. It looks good because there's not much to it.
Oh, he looks like, that's what I say,
that
he looks like that Silver Surfer guy from that really bad Fantastic Four movie.
Yep. Yes, he does.
But I'd actually agree with you. The effects aged very well. There was nothing on there that I was like, did this pass at one point? Like, I remember
because it was super simple.
Yeah, well,
use twins.
Well, exactly. Well, like, I remember when I saw Titanic for the first time in theaters. They brought it back for the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic, and there was the scene, where she goes, "I'm flying," and they pan over the whole ship, and I was like, "Oh my god, has it always looked this bad?"
Oh man, but yeah, super recommend from both of us. Seriously, if you know the location of John or Sarah Connor, please tweet us their geolocation.
We are not Terminators.
Very much appreciate it.
We're not being controlled. Okay.
We just want to have a talk with them. That's all.
I just want to have tea with them. That may or may not have arsenic in it.
All right, well, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Next month is summer camp month.
Woo!
So maybe you'll even be able to guess the next movie. Just take a look at the calendar and maybe pay special attention to the dates.
Yeah, maybe something
That's
will
all
pop
I'll
up
say.
there. Just make sure you have your sleeping bag and your hiking boots.
And don't bring condoms, because sex isn't allowed.
Exactly. All right.
But until next time, guys, stay thirsty. Thanks for chilling with us. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment if you like.
Anywhere else, do the equivalent elsewhere, because I don't know how those other platforms work. But we will catch you guys in the next one. See ya. Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited and produced by Alejandro Castillo and features original artwork by Asa Esparza and original music by Pat Mars. Follow us on Twitter at Reels on the Rocks and tweet at us with any movies or topics you'd like us to discuss in the future.